Welcome into the 11 Warriors draft. If you were a listener to our former podcast, Real Pod Wednesdays, you're probably familiar with this exercise. We've been doing it for several years now. I started doing it with Colin Haas-Hill many years ago, did it with Griffin Strome a couple times, now doing it with Andy Anders, where we draft the players that we think would give us the best chance to beat the other person's team in a head-to-head game entering the season. And so it's going to be a fascinating draft, I think, this year, Andy. Lots of up and coming players on this team that we are going to have to decide on who we think would give us the better chance to win if we were assembling a 22-man lineup to go against the other. Andy, I know you are looking for revenge. So do you have a good strategy going into this year's draft?
Yes, I've met with my front office. We've dispatched a whole fleet of scouts out there. I'm prepared. I'm ready to go. I have my draft board locked and loaded. I have a strategy that I think is going to be a winner this year, and I think the people will agree. I'm hungry to knock you off, Dan. I'm ready for revenge.
I am looking to defend my title from last year when I got a 78% of the vote share on 11warriors.com. Go over to format here before we get started. It will be a snake draft format. We will flip a coin. Whoever wins the coin toss will have the choice. Do they want the number 1 pick or do they want the number 2 and number 3 picks? From there, we will alternate picking 2 players at a time until we get to 44, in which case each of us will have built 11-man lineups on both offense and defense. Positional rules, Andy can't go and take Julian Sain and Lincoln Keynoles of his first 2 picks just to keep me from getting one of the top 2 quarterbacks. You have to draft a real lineup that you would field. So on offense, you're required 1 quarterback, 5 offensive linemen, 5 skill position players. If you want to run a 2 tight end set or a 2 running back set, you're willing to do that, but you have to go 1 quarterback, 5 offensive linemen, and then 5 running backs, wide receivers, or tight ends of your choice. Then on defense, you need at least 3 defensive linemen, 2 linebackers, and 4 DBs with 2 flexible selections. So if you want to run a 3-3-5, you are welcome to do that. You don't have to stick with Ohio State's base of a 4-2-5, but have to have at least 3 defensive linemen, 2 linebackers, 4 DBs. You can't run like 8 DBs or something crazy like that out there, 8 defensive linemen. It's got to be a realistic defensive lineup. And so, Andy, I am going to pull up a Google coin toss simulator here. I'm going to ask you to make the call, heads or tails.
Every time I've done one of these on this podcast, I've called it tails. Every time it's come up heads, but I'm sticking to the bit, baby. Riding with tails, it never fails.
We are flipping, and it is heads.
Ah! It always fails.
Well, you said on our live show last night you're not even a little stitious. So you did not have any superstition of going against the grain there and picking heads. You stuck to your guns. You picked tails. I got heads, and that means I have the first tough choice of this because I think there's definitely a case here for going either way. I mean, we know this team has 2 super studs. You're going to have a chance to get either one of them either way you go here. So I think there's a valid argument here for going with either the number 1 pick or the number 2 of a number 3 pick. I debated it going in. Ultimately, I came to the conclusion I simply cannot pass up the opportunity to draft Jeremiah Smith if I have the opportunity to draft Jeremiah Smith. So because of that, I'm going to draft Jeremiah Smith. I'm going to take the number 1 pick. I'm going to draft Jeremiah Smith because the guy is the best player in college football. If I have an opportunity to have him on my team, I just cannot pass that up.
I wouldn't either if I were in your shoes, Dan, and that would have been my number 1 pick. I think we all know who my number 2 pick is going to be. It's Caleb Downs, best defensive player in the country. Those guys are going to be number 1, number 2, no matter how this shook out. What more can you say about those guys, right? We've written about them all offseason. It's exciting to see what they'll put on the field this year. Now, with my third selection, or my second selection, third selection of the draft, lots of directions you could go here. I'm always going to play the positional scarcity in a situation like this. I think there is one guy that Ohio State doesn't have another guy like him on the roster and is central to a defense, literally center of the action, and that's going to be Caden McDonald. I'm taking him here. Do I think he's the third best player on Ohio State's roster? Maybe not, but I do think he does something no one else can. And so, for the sake of positional scarcity and building a defense and how important the trenches are, I'm taking K-Mac at number 3.
Very shrewd move there, Andy, because you may have anticipated what my next move was going to be if you didn't take a defensive tackle. I was sitting there going, don't take defensive tackle, because I had it teed up. I was ready to take Caden McDonald and Edric Houston
I
with
was
my
going to do
next
the
two
same
picks.
thing if given the chance.
I was ready to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and take the other guy because I know you'll take him next if I don't take him now. So I'm going to go ahead and take Edric Houston with a number 4 pick. I mean, we've talked about it all offseason. There is positional scarcity at defensive tackle. And so that pushes these guys up the board. You know, there's a clear top 2 at the defensive tackle position. So I'm going to go ahead and take Edric Houston and make sure I don't let Andy get both of the team's top defensive tackles. And then I got to go for projected starting quarterback. I've got a chance to get Julian Sayin here with one of my second set of picks. I got to go ahead and take the guy who I think is most likely to be the starting quarterback. Not set in stone there yet. It's still a competition. So, you know, it's certainly possible that, you know, Andy lands a steal later, getting Lincoln Keenholz wherever he does. But I'm going to go ahead and take the guy who I do think ultimately will be the starting quarterback of his team, and I'll take Julian Sayin.
Definitely gives you a leg up there, and I could absolutely see, that could be a deciding factor. But it does give me the ease of not having to worry about my quarterback for a while here. I know it's going to be Lincoln. I think for me, again, I look at positions where there's a guy that's a cut above the rest, clearly, and as good and as deep as Ohio State's tight end room is, I just think Max Clare is a potential Mackey Award candidate, is going to have a receiving production that the rest of the room isn't going to have, and the way they're going to use him, maybe flex him out to the slot. Max Clare is going to be my next choice. And then I also think there's some clear separation on the offensive line at linebacker. There's some places you can look at. But for me, I'm riding with Sonny Styles, team leader, setting the foundation of my defense, my linebacking core. Give me a nice guy to play up the middle behind Caden McDonald and support him to sort of, again, form the middle of my defense there. So Sonny Styles, Max Clare, those are my next 2 picks.
2 good choices. They were both among the top guys on my board for my next pick. And so it gives me a tough decision here. Like, I feel like, okay, now I'm at the point where I'm like, all right, there's like 4 or 5 guys now that I could consider going with for this next pick. So weighing my options here a little bit. I think for the first pick, you know what? I've got Julian Sayin, I've got Jeremiah Smith. Let's keep the aerial tech going. I'll take Carnell Tate. That gives me 2 of the best wide receivers in the country, along with the team's likely starting quarterback. So give me that aerial assault. We're going to take it to the air with Jeremiah, Julian, and Carnell. And then for my next choice, there's a few different directions I could go here. You know what? The way that this guy has been talked about all offseason, the fact that this guy is likely going to be the starting left tackle for the Ohio State football team this year, you can argue that's the second most important position outside a quarterback. I want to go get ahead and get the anchor of my offensive line, so I'm going to go ahead and take Austin Siereveld with the next pick.
Great choice. Austin was pretty high on my board. Probably would have been among my next 2 choices there. Now I'm getting a little scared on the receivers running thin here. But is there a ton of separation between the number 3 and number 4 guys on my receiver board? I'm not sure. I think I have the opportunity to do something funny here, and so I'm going to do it just for the bit. I'm going to take both Arvell Reese and Peyton Pierce, and I'm going to run a 4-3, just so you can't have any of the top 3 linebackers, and I'll take all 3 of them, and that's how we'll work with it.
Now that's a curveball I did not see coming right there. That's a curveball I definitely was not anticipating. Not surprised you took Reese to lock me out at linebacker, but taking Peyton Pierce, didn't see that one coming. But I give you credit for it. Tip my hat to you on that.
Have the
Okay.
formational versatility. I got to use it.
Yes. No, you. It's an interesting choice. It's an interesting choice. You're certainly going to have a leg up on me at linebacker. It's going to force me to get a little creative with my linebacker picks later. Again, torn a little bit between a couple different directions here. But you know what? If you're going to play that game, I got to play it too. Luke Montgomery, Carson Hinsman.
Well done, sir. Well done. A clever retort, as they say. All right. Well, I got to snatch up some of those positions while they're still available to me. Give me Tager Shabola here, clear next lineman to come off the board. And I need an offensive tackle too, probably. But I also want one of the starting receivers. So I'm going to take Brandon Innes. Tager Shabola, Brandon Innes. And I'll start figuring out the rest of my offensive line here as we go.
Logical choices there. Logical choices, certainly. Didn't want me to take 4 of the starting offensive linemen or all 3 of the starting wide receivers. All right. I'm a little honestly surprised that I've managed to wait this long without taking this guy because I considered him with both of my last 2 sets of picks. I will not wait any longer. We've heard tons of good things about Kenyatta Jackson this offseason, so I am going to take Kenyatta Jackson with the 16th pick, and then I'm going to go ahead and secure the guy who I think will be the top cornerback on the team, and it's a very close choice here, but I'm going to go with Jermaine Matthews Jr.
Jermaine would have been my top pick at corner as well. I expect a big year out of Jermaine. I think you know this, but given the choice there of what's left, I think Davison Igbinosun is an obvious choice to follow up Jermaine. Just make sure I lock up again, like you said, not a whole lot of separation between those two as the top outside cornerbacks for Ohio State. I think Caleb and Davison is a fine combination there, and I'm only drafting 4 defensive backs now with 3 linebackers, so I think that's a good anchor tandem. Next pick, some different directions I'm considering here. I think you have one of your defensive ends, but I'm not sure I can go wrong with some of the there's good options. They're just deep at defensive end this year. I think trying to think of there's been some curveballs in this draft, and
There
I
have
know
been.
there's been it's evolved some ways. Who do I think? All right, I got to make a decision. I'm just going to go ahead and pull the trigger on Bo Atkinson. Continue to shore up my front 7. I think that's going to be an advantage for me in this. Obviously, taking the 3 linebackers that are going to play. So I now have K-Mac and Bo Atkinson to help lead the way up front.
2 solid choices there. Davison would have been my next pick. I would have tried to get both of the top 2 corners. So, was hoping you'd let me do that, but you didn't quite let me do that. We've heard a lot about cross training on the offensive line, and I'm having a tough time choosing who I'd want to be my starting right tackle. So you know what? I'm just going to take them both and fill out my offensive line, Philip Daniels and Ethan Onyanwa.
Good choices there. I think you're loaded up on some of the best offensive linemen here. But it does now. I know who my starting 5 are. You got your 5. I know
Yep.
the other 4 guys. I'm going to draft. At least I can take solace in that fact. We're both going to have some holes in our rosters here, Dan. This is interesting how the people are going to decide this. We'll see who they value more between linebacker and offensive line, I guess. But let's see here. I think next off the board for me, the running back I think is going to have the best year for Ohio State is James Peoples. Been high on him since the beginning. And just so I can fill out my skill position guys before maybe you swoop them up, because I still only have 1 receiver on my roster. The situation is what it is for me at quarterback and offensive line. I'm going to take Mylan Graham with my next pick. I If he gets involved in the offense this year, I think he's going to have a huge year. We've every practice we've seen from the guy, the spring game, he's been impressive. So I expect big things from Mylan Graham, and I have no qualms about Brandon Innes and Mylan Graham with Max Clare to help head my receiver tandem.
Yeah, those are two that I definitely would have considered there in my next group of guys. So two solid choices there for sure. Few guys that I could consider here. I think I'm going to go ahead and get me a couple of defensive backs. I'm going to go ahead and start with an upside play, and I'm going to go Devin Sanchez. We certainly know that we don't know how much he'll play this year with Jermaine and Davison leading the way, but we know he's a guy who has star potential in the future. So if you get in Davison, I will go ahead and grab Devin to start alongside Jermaine at cornerback, and then kind of deciding between a few other guys here. I'm going to go ahead and take Malik Hartford, because if you're having Caleb to play that free safety spot, I think Malik's the guy who's the best fit for me to man that free safety spot with you already having Caleb. So I will take Malik Hartford.
Back-to-back secondary choices. I think I'll go ahead and snatch up Jalen McClain here to rob you of your probable next pick at safety, and complete my defensive backfield outside of who my second cornerback will be. That's 3 out of 4 DBs that I feel very confident in, and I kind of like the shape my defense is taking here. On the offensive side, we're starting to get to the point in the draft where it's less about robbing guys from the other guys and filling out the depth positions where there's only, the other guy's completed his starting lineup, so to speak. Honestly, actually, I think the direction I'm going to go in is go ahead and snatch up my 3-tech. Who do I think among Ohio State's 3-techs is going to have the best season? We've heard a lot of talk about this guy and the praise that's come out about him. He's an Ohio State legacy, would be a great story. I think I'm going to take Will Smith Jr. here to pair with K-Mac and be my second defensive tackle. I think he's the best of the available remaining guys there and the best fit at nose, where you have Edric, and I'm not sure who your nose is yet.
That was a shrewd choice. I probably should have taken Will. When you started talking about going offense, I'm like, maybe you'll let me get Will with my next pick, because he would have been my next pick. So that was a shrewd choice for sure. Definitely leaves me with a little bit of a weakness at nose tackle. So I was hoping I could get him with one of my next picks. Just like I'm like, when I saw what you did with a linebacker, I'm like, well, I don't want him to take both Malik and Jalen. So I'm like, I can't leave that up to chance. That's why I went ahead and took Malik there, knowing you'd probably take Jalen with one of your next picks. But a shrewd pick there for sure, taking Will Smith Jr. Taking a look at the board here to see where it makes sense for me to go next. I think there's really only one guy that I think we know for sure can be that nickelback type, and it's possible you could take him as your second corner to keep him away from me. So I'm going to go ahead with Lorenzo Styles Jr. Since I do plan on running 5 DB set, I will go ahead and take Lorenzo Styles Jr. with the 28th overall pick. And then looking at where I should go next, I think I will go ahead and take the top defensive end left on the board, and I will go ahead and take Caden Curry. There's been a lot of talk about Kenyatta and Caden really being kind of the two guys that are leading that defensive end room as seniors, the guys who have been the top backups for a couple years. They're both going to play a ton at defensive end this year, and I'll have them both on my team. So Caden Curry is the 29th pick.
There you go. Again, now for me, it's just really about filling out the rest of my lineup and where I want to go at some of these positions. I think we're getting a little creative about our formations here. And since I did it on defense, I'll do it on offense too. Ohio State's base set is 3 receivers, but I think honestly, given the choice between Bryson Rogers and Will Kacmarek in my starting offense, I like that blocking, get downhill, ruggedness that Will Kacmarek provides. And so rather than draft a third receiver, I'll take a second tight end and go with Will Kacmarek here as my second tight end. And I'm going to need the support on the offensive line. Let's be real. Get Will in there, help secure the pass pro, clear some way in the ground game. And then speaking of that offensive line, I'll go ahead and start patching it up now. You took both Philip Daniels and Ethan Onyanwa, very shrewd on your part. I think I'll take my tackle then that's left to me to start that group at least is Ian Moore. Ian I could be involved in the competition a little bit this year. He's kind of faded from it, but with Austin, Ethan and Philip all off the board, feel like that's kind of what's left to me there at that position. So Will Kacmarek, Ian Moore, patching up some things there on my offensive front.
Will definitely a shrewd pick there. I was thinking, oh, he's already got Max Clare. I can probably wait one more round to take Will Kacmarek. I was wrong about that. So
12 personnel, baby.
Yep. You're really going old school. You got 12 personnel on offense, 3 linebackers on defense. Like you are. I think you have decided to turn Ohio State into Iowa. Although I do think, although to be clear, I do think Lincoln Keynoles will be far better. There was actually rumor. I remember was it last year there were rumors that Lincoln Keynoles was going to transfer to Iowa.
Yeah, no, that was definitely a thing.
He would have been a big up. They don't need him now. They got Mark Gronowski, South Dakota State transfer, who looks like he's going to be pretty good for him. But yeah, I mean, Iowa, I don't know if Iowa has a, Brandon Innes or Mylan Graham, but the 2 tight end set, the 3 linebacker set, that is very Kirk Ferentz
smash mouth. Show him what for.
Now, letting me draft 5 of his top 6 offensive linemen is not so.
We'll have to talk about that part for the ground
formationally. But as you said, now we're very much at the point where, like, okay, we look at our routes, like we're both very much at the point of just filling holes here. There's not a whole lot more maneuvering left to do that I can see, so it really just becomes a matter of filling out the roster. So I will go ahead and I'm double checking. Like, is there anywhere he can still outmaneuver me? I think unless he's doing something really crazy, probably not. So I will go ahead, and since I need to take a linebacker, I will go ahead and take Riley Pettijohn as my top linebacker, a player who I think is going to be a really good player. Don't know how much he'll play this year because of the 3 guys that you took, but I do think he's going to be that number 4 linebacker, is going to be a really good player for Ohio State in due time. So I think that makes sense for me here. And then, I suppose if you wanted to go real crazy, you could draft another defensive tackle to play at end or something, just so I can't get another defensive tackle. So I guess I should go get my defensive tackle. So like you said, not really a true nose left on the board at this point, but I do think the 2 deep that Ohio State will have this year, I think likely the 4th guy in that 2 deep is going to be Tywone Malone. So I'll go ahead and take Tywone Malone as my second defensive tackle.
It's a good choice. I was not planning to play a defensive tackle at defensive end, but
you never know.
You never know. You're right. You can tell, especially when I pulled the old 4-3 out of the bag earlier. So I guess again, since we're just filling holes at this point, Lincoln Keenholz, go ahead and take my quarterback. Lincoln could still win the quarterback competition. Either way, I think he's completely competent to run the offense. And again, behind my offensive line helps to have a guy with some scrambling ability. That will help mitigate one of the weaknesses of my roster. I think Lincoln's legs helping to open some things up there. Go ahead and keep filling this offensive line just because it's kind of what I feel like doing at this point, and that's going to be Josh Padilla. I think is my next clear choice to play center for me. We saw some of his mauling ability, some of his real blocking ability and ability to play downhill uh, last year. Some opportunities that he got. I like Josh Padilla at center. I think when Carson Hinsman goes pro, he's the clear next guy up, whenever that is, whether that's this year, next year. So, not this year, obviously, but after this year. So yeah, Josh Padilla, Lincoln Keenholz, those are my next two picks.
I'll go ahead and round out my secondary since you do still need one more DB. So I'll go ahead and take Fahim Delane to be my strong safety. I think he's a guy who, is a natural fit to play strong safety, probably a future starter for the Buckeyes at safety and likely their number 4 safety this year. So I think he's the best fit left on the board to round out the secondary that I have. And then you've already got all your offensive skill position guys, so I might as well draft my second linebacker, which I gotta think about it here. I mean, if I could move CJ Hicks back to linebacker, I would just do that because then I would take him away from you. But we did say, the ground rules did say you got to draft at least 2 linebackers. He's not a linebacker anymore, so I'm not gonna break the rules. That would be unethical if I did that. And so I'm gonna play within the boundaries of the rules and will not do that. I think I just got to bet on upside here at this point and go with TJ Alford, an all freshman linebacker core, a little bit green at that position, but 2 guys who I think have the potential to be future stars for the Buckeye defense. So we'll draft TJ Alford with the 37th pick.
Yeah, for me, one of the best guys left on the board. At least, yeah, for what I want at corner, I'm going to go ahead and take Aaron Scott Jr. to round out my secondary. Since you've already snapped up Devin Sanchez, but Davison Igbinosun, Caleb Downs, and Jalen McLean to help support Aaron Scott, who I think could be a really good player this year, honestly. They're very deep in that cornerback room. So I'll take Aaron Scott Jr. as my second corner gladly. And then just continuing to work on the offensive line. The next guy, I think, to complement Ian Moore, play at the other tackle there with Tager playing guard, will be Carter Lowe. Like you being green at linebacker, I'm going to have a green right tackle there. Probably put Ian Moore at left just because he has a little more experience. But Carter Lowe, very talented Ohio guy, going to be great one day. I don't know if he'd be ready this year, but this is where I'm at with offensive tackle, and he's the next guy to come off the board for me. We're taking Carter Lowe.
I'm interested now that you've made the pick. Did you think at all about moving Tegra out to tackle and just drafting
I did
2 guards?
consider it, but ultimately I think Carter, my options were thin at guard too, honestly, if I did that with Tegra, because then I've got to draft 2 more guards to try and fill that spot. And there's a clear next guard to take, but I don't know about after that. So
that makes sense. I just have offensive skill position players left to take. So I'll go ahead and take 2 of those guys now. I'll take CJ Donaldson to be my running back. This was one of those where I'm like, I know Andy likes Peoples. I was willing to let you get Peoples because I think CJ Donaldson is going to be a really good back in this Ohio State offense too. So I was willing to let you get Peoples, even though I would have taken Peoples first, because I don't think there's going to be a big gap between James Peoples and CJ Donaldson. And so I feel good about getting CJ Donaldson as my running back. And then I just got to decide, okay, now what do I do? Top 2 tight ends off the board. What do I do in terms of receivers, tight ends here? How do
could run 4 of them out there.
That's what I'm debating. I'm like, do I go for receivers? Do I grab a tight end? Do I go to running backs? I mean, there's a lot. There's several different ways that I could go here. to make things interesting. I do want one real tight end. I don't want to go no tight ends. So while I ponder that last pick, I'll go ahead and take Jelani Furman. I think outside of Max Clare, he offers the most playmaking potential at tight end. I debated Bennett Christian here too, because Bennett Christian is a really good blocker. But given that I already have 5 of the top 6 offensive linemen, I feel like it makes sense for me to be looking for another vertical playmaker at that position. And I do think Jelani Furman has made a lot of strides in all areas of his game this offseason. So give me Jelani Furman with a 41st pick.
I've got 2 more here. The 2 spots I need to fill are 1 more guard and 1 more defensive end. Defensive end, C.J. Hicks. That's where I'm going. I considered Logan George in this spot for the run defense, but I love the edge rushing that C.J. provides. Get after the quarterback. Still developing his run defensive instincts, but Bo Atkinson can at least give me that on the other side. I trust Bo Atkinson's run defense at the very least, and we know he can pressure quarterbacks too. Rounding out my front 7 there defensively. Offensively, the clear next guard left is Gabe Van Sickle. We've heard a lot of positive things about his development this offseason, being a guy who can provide real depth for Ohio State. He's going to start for me, not be a depth guy, but that's going to round out my offensive line, my little bit of a patchwork unit there.
All right, 1 pick left on the board. It just comes down to me picking a skill position player. And I think about there's 4 or 5 different ways I could go here. Like, I can take the true slot receiver, which I don't have, and get Bryson Rodgers. I can go for the freshman upside here, and I could take Quincy Porter. I could go 2 tight ends like Andy. I could take Bennett Christian. I could take a guy like Turbo Rogers, who I think has some versatility to be both a running back and a slot receiver and utilize his skill set. I could go Bo Jackson and have two big running backs coming out of a backfield. So I'm genuinely conflicted here on what is the best strategy for me. But I got to think about it and say, okay, Andy's going to run a 4-3. He doesn't have a nickel back in his lineup. So I've got to exploit that with a third wide receiver, specifically somebody who's a slot receiver. So I'll go ahead and take Bryson Rodgers to complete this draft.
There you go. You get to match up Bryson on Sonny Styles. We'll see if Sonny can slide back out and give me some dip back into that safety bag a little bit from his first few years at Ohio State. A matchup with the best route runner in the country, as Bryson Rodgers would describe himself. So, this has been a fun draft. I'm honestly kind of split here. I think we both have some pretty good lineups here working. There's some strengths and weaknesses on both sides, some clear ones.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very fascinating draft. You take a look at the lineups here as we throw them up on the screen, kind of looking at them head to head. Me getting Julian Sayin, Andy getting Lincoln Keenholz. Again, that can be a preference there. Same thing, running back, James Peoples, C.J. Donaldson. That could be a matter of preference here. Wide receiver, I like to think having Jeremiah Smith on my team, I think that kind of gives me the clear edge at wide receiver. But you still got 2 really good wide receivers in Mylan Graham and Brandon Ennis. You do have the clear advantage at tight end, Max Clare and Will Kasmarek in your 2 tight end Iowa-style offense. I think I have the clear advantage on the offensive line, as I did draft 5 of the top 6 offensive linemen on the team. Defensive line, that's kind of one of those positions where, you could make a case either way. You have Caden McDonald and Bo Atkinson and Will Smith Jr. I've got Edric Houston, Kenyatta Jackson, Caden Curry. So I think defensive line, that's one of those positions you could very much go either way with. Linebacker, certainly you have the edge there, getting all of the top 3 linebackers. I do like, what I have, in the secondary, getting Jermaine Matthews, Devin Sanchez, Lorenzo Styles at cornerback. Of course, you have Caleb Downs, so that gives you the edge at safety, though I do think I have 2 good players there, Malik Hartford, Fahim Delane. So, Andy, as we kind of wrap this up, you look at how this draft played out, maybe kind of what are you happiest with and what maybe are you having second thoughts about?
I think honestly, I'd take my defense over yours in a heartbeat. That's where I'm at with where I'm happy. But then your offensive line is much better than mine, and so I think that would be the interesting matchup of this. Not only do I, you said you'll take your secondary. I'd take my secondary. I think with Caleb, with Davison, kind of being a wash for me between him and Jermaine, both being great players. I love Jalen McClain there. I think the pairing of Jalen McClain and Caleb Downs, I would take over Malik Hartford and Fahim Delane there at safety. So I really like my secondary, my linebackers. Defensive line is close. I think overall I have the edge defensively. But it's, again, that offensive line, which is, you'll know, I'll say, is one of the most important position groups in football. You have the clear edge there. So that's the obvious weakness of my lineup. Also, Jeremiah Smith going to give you the obvious leg up at receiver too. So I think both of us have, again, there's a couple position groups we feel really good about, a couple position groups we feel really bad about. And that's kind of where I'm at with it is, but I think for what I can do defensively, I think there's advantages to my team too.
Yeah, I mean, I feel really good about the offensive line. I mean, I remember the year that I really got blown out. I think it might have been against Colin, but I really got blown out in the draft. It was because he got most of the top offensive linemen, and I, had a clear disadvantage in that area. And I feel like I've turned the tables here with what I was able to assemble on the offensive line. So I feel good about that. I mean, I think that if I was looking at these two lineups, I feel like that's where I'm winning the game is that offensive line. I think you can certainly make a case for your defense being better. I think you probably have a couple more starters than I do, and so you can certainly make a case for your defense being better. But to me, I've got the clear edge on the offensive line. Oh yeah, I've also got Jeremiah Smith. Having Jeremiah Smith, I don't care who you got out there on defense. Number 4 ain't easy to cover. So I got number 4. I've got Julian Sayin. I've got Carnell Tate. I've got a very, very good offensive line. I'm liking my chances. I really am. But it's up for you, all of the listener, to decide. We will have a poll running on 11 Warriors with the article where you can read more of our explanations on our picks, as well as our personal cases for why you should vote for each of our teams. And then at the bottom, you'll be able to cast your vote for who should win. So may the best team win, right, Andy?
May the best team win.
Well, we thank you all for listening in to another episode here, following along with our draft, part of our season preview on 11 Warriors. So lots more content to come as part of the 11 Warriors season preview. For now, he's Andy Anders. I'm Dan Hope. We'll catch you next time.